just moving on from that, then I don't want to be the podcast where we just criticize a load of teams, but we're going to go ahead and criticize another team because it's 5 losses in 6 for Spurs, and they went 2-0 down against West Ham and seemed to have a spirited comeback after that, pulled one back. Bale hit the crossbar with an unbelievable shot, but at the moment they're pretty bad. And I was reading today, Jose Mourinho was saying that his coach's methods are second to none, but it seems a lot of the Spurs players disagree with that. They think the training methods are outdated. They're too defensive. It's too opposition focused, and the training sessions aren't intense enough. The attacking players are very upset when it comes closer to a game, particularly a big game. They start to really fear the opponents because that's all they focus on, the opponents. They spent hours during the week of the Liverpool game practicing defending throw-ins. And one dressing room source said that it's just too far up to Kane and Son. Jose Mourinho, I personally think he'll probably go at the end of the season if he doesn't win the Europa League.
I think when you're trying to be as defensive as Tottenham are trying to be, you actually have to have a good defensive line. Alderweireld's past that. I know he probably hasn't played in a while, but Davinson Sanchez, not convincing him. Like Serge Aurier and Doherty, they're not really the kind of defensive fullbacks that Mourinho has dreamed of. And Lloris he's not a very good goalkeeper either. And then with them hitting the posts last while, it's been end product. So nearly is never in the world of football. I know hoofing it up to Kane and Son is a good plan, but sure, any team can just defend a big hoofball by playing a deeper line. They were very good at the start of the season. They had all this energy, and I don't know what brought Mourinho to playing this terrorism of football with try go 1-0 up and park everyone behind the ball. Like, it's just miserable watching.
I was going to say, like, early on the season, there was a few times I think they beat Southampton 6-1 earlier on in the season, and they beat someone else, I think 5-2, I think, early on as well. So, like, when they actually tried to play attacking football earlier on in the season, they were quite good. And even more recently against Sheffield, I know it's only Sheffield, but they did try to play a bit more attacking. And again, they scored 3 goals and they look good going forward. I think that is a problem. It's just Mourinho probably is just too scared of the opponents. And there's probably too much pressure on Mourinho to do well there. It's too much pressure on Mourinho to do well anywhere he goes, really. And it was the whole thing during the week. He said when he came in, he had the best squad in the world. Best squad. He had a really good squad there. And he spent 135 million since he got in. And now he's saying that the players he has there aren't good enough. So he's clearly bullshitting as he normally does when he's under pressure.
Any teams you've cited though that he's done well against there, like the only one that you'd say is half decent was Southampton, but that game was even an outlier because literally like every ball that went through the Son he put away. So they've never really created many chances in games. They've just been very clinical, obscenely clinical. And that was obviously going to slow down. And Lucas Moura isn't going to provide that added goals. The style of play doesn't help. But I think the style of play definitely is outdated. But it doesn't like help you whatsoever if all your centre backs are absolutely shit, and they all are. They're all terrible. Roden just looks okay because he's got great tattoos and a great beard. That's just like that's all he is. So it's a disaster. That squad's just not very good. Doesn't fill you with much. But Doherty and Bale looks okay there on the right hand side when they linked up. Like once they actually went for it and attacked West Ham, like that was actually something quite promising.
I seen there that supposedly Mourinho's not keen on Doherty, and that type of thing with Mourinho just drives me up the wall. Like you signed this guy 4 months ago, and now you don't fancy him. It happened with Fred. People don't talk enough about how much Fred costs United. They talk about other players to bring up, maybe Maguire's name, Pogba's name. Fred cost us the guts of 50 million. Like he was a very similar price to Bruno Fernandes. And it was Mourinho who brought him in. And as soon as he brought him in, didn't fancy him. Like Mourinho drives me up the wall with that type of thing, signing players and then making it seem like they're the ones who are bad. It's like you spend all this money on them.
Is there a shallow recruitment there, you think? Well,
obviously there'd be a lot of people, but at United, certainly he had the final say. Spurs don't have a director of football, do they?
True, but he has the final say. But do you think his analysis is in-depth enough? Do you think he just kind of fancy because Doherty always played in the back five, like, and he's playing the back four, like that's very misleading.
I think he just signs players, be like, yeah, he can probably do a job, because ultimately it's like, long term, will this player make sense? Doesn't matter for Mourinho because he's not going to be there long term. It's like Fred, yeah, he'll give me another option. He knew he was going to be sacked, 6 months later, and maybe I think basically with Spurs this season, teams, I think they've just figured them out from that first few weeks. They're playing really high lines. Teams weren't really adjusting. And it's the same. If you play a really high line against Spurs today, they're probably going to score goals against you. But it's just a very easy thing to say, right, we're just going to sit back a bit, play a bit more conservative, because you've no real playmaker. Lamella's plays as number 10, and he's not brilliant, is he? Ndombele, to be fair, has looked better this season, but he's nothing special. And I think with Mourinho, it's not an exaggeration to say, oh, Mourinho, like it almost sounds like a cliche, but it's not an exaggeration to say they're just playing too defensive, because Mourinho spends so much time focusing on the other team, backed up by that article I've cited in The Athletic. But I think the reason it doesn't really work so much now as it did in 2004 when he took over at Chelsea is that these Premier League clubs have loads of coaches, loads of analysts, data analysts. They know what the opposition's weakness is. So Mourinho's expertise, it's not quite what it was.